Welcome to another episode of the Plutus Awards Podcast. Our community is filled with hundreds of stories from creators and entrepreneurs just like you. And through this show, we share these stories of challenges and successes, from bloggers to podcasters to writers, speakers, and more. Today's guest is Acquania Escarne, a financial coach, hotel owner, podcast host of The Purpose of Money, and an independent life insurance producer. We talk about how growing up, watching her mom become an entrepreneur helped her carve out a path on her own, why passive income is currently a priority for her, and all the ways she's managing income and cash flow for if she ever wants to leave her 9-to-5. Let's dive right into my conversation with Acquania. I would love to start off about your story about A, why you wanted to become an entrepreneur, and B, how you wanted to do it differently than from what you saw growing up.
I am a product of an entrepreneur mom. My mom did so many businesses when I was a child. She got a degree in accounting and a background in that, but realized early on she didn't like working for other people and eventually opened up several businesses. My mom sold life insurance, ATM machines, credit card services, and even worked seasonally for the IRS during their busy months. One thing that I noticed is money always fluctuated. Sometimes my mom would have plenty, sometimes it would just barely be enough. And I appreciate that experience as a child because I learned to appreciate everything I had. And I also learned the grit that comes with being an entrepreneur. When I was 16, my dad gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I realized from reading that book that ownership and entrepreneurship, where you're not working in your business, but you're having that passive income come in, is actually a better way to do it. And I remember as a child, my mom never hired anyone other than me. And it was because she couldn't afford to. And now I'm an entrepreneur. I sell life insurance just like my mom, and I hire people. You know, I have a team that helps me accomplish the several things I do because it allows me the flexibility and freedom to do other things. And I'm also still, unlike my mom, I'm still in a 9-to-5.
Tell me some of the things that the people that you have hired do for you.
So I have someone who helps with social media. I have a virtual assistant who helps me keep my clients organized and manages my schedule. I have someone who helps me edit my podcast because I have a podcast called The Purpose of Money where I share women entrepreneurship stories. And I used to try to edit that and do my show notes and all that myself. And I realized that was just way too time consuming. And I got so much time back by outsourcing that.
I love asking this question because I'm always so curious, different people's reactions to their very first hire. For some, it's really scary. For you, I'm not sure, like what did it feel like to hire the first person for your business?
So it was scary. And I actually required a lot of coaching to do it. So last year, in the middle of 2020, I had the best year of my business. It took off. I feel like when you're at home in a pandemic and you're reflecting on your life, all of these people realize they didn't have enough life insurance or they didn't have any life insurance. And they also wanted to work on their budget. And I do financial coaching too. So mid-year, a couple of things happened. One, my coach found me. She actually DM'd me on Instagram and I attended one of her free workshops and then was like, I really like her. Her name is Shanice Wise. Shout out to Shanice Wise in Ohio. And I decided that I needed to start investing in myself. Prior to that, I hadn't really had a coach before. I had done some coaching programs that were group coaching programs, and I didn't really thrive in those. And I was really hesitant to make this investment, but I ended up meeting with her. We had a conversation. We hit it off one-on-one as well. And I decided to start working with her. And so when I told her all the things that I do, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a 9-to-5 employee, and I'm a mom and a wife, she said to me, I don't know how you're doing all of this, but you need help. And we talked through all the tasks that I was doing, and she had me write a list of all the things that someone else could do. I know this seems like a simple exercise, but it was actually helpful for me to mentally understand when I saw the list on paper that this is literally things I could give away and still have my life, right? So that was the first thing, is her coaching me to the point where I could accept that I needed the help, because I was so in fear that once I hire someone, now I have to pay them, right? And now I have to make enough money to provide for someone else. And you don't want to hire someone and then not be able to pay them. Like, that's also a fear of mine. So it took some reflection on my numbers, reflection on the task that I was going to outsource. Then I just kind of went out on a limb and I talked about what I needed with other entrepreneurs and clients that I trusted, that we have a relationship. And I knew that if I told them I'm in need of a virtual assistant, they might actually come back with solutions. And I prefer to start with the referral process from people I know, because we already have a relationship. We already trust each other and I trust their opinion. And that is literally what happened. My virtual assistant is a friend and a client who I was telling her all this stuff I do. And she was like, again, I don't know how you do it. And then she was saying, oh, well, I could really use a couple of extra bucks a month. I'm really good at this, this, and this. And I said, oh, maybe you could be my virtual assistant. And she had also expressed interest in learning about the life insurance industry and what I do. So I said, oh, the best way to learn is to shadow me. And the rest is history. I can't live without her. And I hope she never leaves me. Natalie knows who she is. And I won't say her last name because I don't want anyone to steal her. But that's how it started. And once I had the courage to hire her and I realized, oh my God, not only do I have more time, but I have more time to make more money. Then I brought on the other people who also through network. I ended up talking to a friend of mine who went to college with me, who had a student who was looking to utilize her marketing degree on social media for other people. We had a great conversation, ended up hiring her. We've been working together 2 years now. So that's just kind of how my network of support grew. And I felt empowered with every person when I was able to hire women and I was able to give women opportunities to work with me. And the podcasting editor that I ended up hiring found me as well. So I also consider myself very fortunate in that most of the people that I work with and I love to work with have found me, or I have found them through my network. It's funny because another entrepreneur who I'm friends with, we were talking last week, and he said, you know, all the great people, everybody who I've recommended to him, he still works with too. So I said, you know what? I think that's my gift. I think connecting people is one of the things I do really well, because I'm constantly listening to what other people need. And when I hear it, I think about those in my network that have a similar problem or ability to solve that problem and the solution, and I will connect those people together. So it's only natural that as I grow my business, I'm also growing other people's businesses, because when I find a good person and I talk to them and they say they can take on more work, then I recommend them out to other people. And that's kind of how my network has been growing.
That's amazing. So it sounds like getting over that sort of initial hurdle of being a little bit scared to hire your first person really opened the doors to all of these possibilities, as well as helping other people grow their business too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And that time that I freed up allowed me to work on projects that yielded more opportunities. So it was perfect.
Are these opportunities related to life insurance, or was it something else?
Yes. So last year, I had no digital products. This is one example. Everyone I talked to was like, you're always doing these free webinars. You are like a bucket of knowledge. You should do something. You should capture this somewhere. And again, I was like, well, I don't know where to start. I don't know how to do it. And so my coach helped me through that too, where she outlined a couple of things that I could be doing and offering to people that I can't necessarily reach or talk to one-on-one. So this year, I did a couple of things. I launched a course, Finances 101, where I walk people through 6 steps to manage your finances better and start building wealth. And then I also wrote an ebook that goes with the course. So it's an activities book that you can do as you transition through the modules. And then I just started like getting on a roll. I was like, well, I can do a spreadsheet bundle. I can provide webinars, one-on-one coaching. So it's been a year of growth this year, really seeing one, the things people need, and two, the things that I already know and I just needed to create. And that's what kind of pushed me to, again, do things differently, because my mom never had any passive income, right? Technically, when she sold the ATM machines, she did get residual income. Once the machine was installed, you get income off of the transactions, but you needed a lot of those transactions or a lot of machines for that really to really mean a difference for you. One of the things that really hurt her industry is when the big banks came in and they started giving ATM machines to the gas stations and the businesses. It kind of put her out of business because she couldn't compete with free. Somebody had to buy the equipment, and previously it used to be her and or the owner of the location you were putting the machine, and then they would split the revenue earned off of the transaction fees. Well, when the big banks came in, made it pretty much impossible for her to keep up, she had to transition out of that business too. And so at least in this space where I'm creating my own audience, my own followers, and my own spin on how I do things, these digital products are living out there on the web, right? And people can buy them when they're ready, when it makes sense for them, when they want to support me, when they need it. And that's been helpful too, because now I might have a few emails from Stripe that people made purchases and I didn't have to do anything, right? And that's been an eye opener, even as someone who knows the value of passive income through real estate. It was really interesting to learn the reality of passive income in a business. And that's something that it takes time to recognize. And it also takes courage, because I had to have the courage to make the course. I had the plan in my head for months. And I had to sit down and say, write the outline, record the videos, get the slides done, set a deadline. And now I've been following that same pattern for the last couple of months on whatever I do next. It's just kind of keeping me going.
So in terms of patterns or the next steps, you mean think of what it is that you want to do and then muster up that courage and then take the next step. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. And I will say one thing I learned, which everyone says this, but I didn't listen in the beginning, is do the research too, right? I had in my head what I wanted to do and what I thought people wanted. And now I'm even realizing that I could have done it differently. I could have structured my course differently. I could have turned my course into 3 different courses. I didn't realize a lot of that because I hadn't actually researched as many similar courses as mine and what they could look like, but I wanted to get it done. So I am that person who needs the pressure to get it done. But I also learned as an entrepreneur that there's so much flexibility in revising, which people assume once you put it out there, you can't change it. That's so not true. I've actually appreciated seeing the growth of other entrepreneurs' projects. And I can remember how they started. And then I look at where they are now, and they have these 6-figure, 7-figure courses, and their business is just surrounded by their brand. And then I realized you grow as a person and as an entrepreneur. And as you do so, so do your products, so do how you relate to your ideal target audience and the people who follow you. And so you can give yourself that grace in entrepreneurship too, which no one had said to me. But when I realized it, I was like, I can relaunch. And then I talked to other coaches with courses, and they were like, oh, I've relaunched my signature course 2-3 times a year. And I've always added to it. And I'm like, really? You can do that? But that's what they do. And their customers are so appreciative because they're growing with them. If you're doing it like I'm doing it, where you're having, allowing this lifetime access or access to the original people and access to new people, then everyone gets the same content. As you grow, they get more too. So they're re-engaging with your content. They're revisiting your content, which is so valuable, because in the beginning, I just assumed it's a one shot And if you don't hit this shot in the rim, then that's it. And it's like, no, you could take as many shots as you need to make this product the best product it can be. And so as I learn more, I add to my course too. And that's something that new users get to benefit from. So that's something that I think people should understand and they should allow themselves to do. But I definitely needed the pressure to just get it out there.
How often do you reflect now on your courses or even just your business overall?
Often. So interestingly enough, I am now kind of doing pre-planning in advance. Wow. I know that sounds crazy, but before I used to think in like quarters, and now I'm being trained to think in the year increments. So I'm actually starting to plan out 2022. And most people are like, well, I'm just trying to get to December. And I said, yeah, I already have my year done. It's next year that I want to start planning because I want it to be seamless for you, my listeners, my followers, my customers, and for me. So I'm thinking that far in advance on my next something. I already have ideas for 2022 that are going to take a year to actually execute. So I'm giving myself the year I need to plan it, and then I'll make the announcements when the time is right. But I've been an entrepreneur since 2016, and it's taken time to get to that point. But now I understand why you need to do this planning because it makes the results so much better. And it makes it easier for people to get on board to support you because they see the value in what you're providing.
Yeah, it sounds like you've iterated many different ways since 2016. So which at the time of this recording has been about 5-ish years now.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get back to your focus on passive income because that was a major lesson that you learned from your mom. So what other arms in your business right now are you focusing on in terms of passive other than products or even your coaching?
So outside of life insurance and financial coaching, I also invest in real estate. That is a journey in itself that started probably a little bit earlier than 2016. And the only reason why is because my husband and I were forced to become landlords. And what I mean by that is my husband purchased a house before we got married, or a townhouse before we got married in 2006 at the height of the market. Then we got married. We lived in that house for 6 years and then moved to Dubai for my job. My job sent me to Dubai for 3 years. He ended up getting a job with his firm there as well. And off to Dubai we went. But in 2012, when we left, we weren't in a position to sell because of the market. Our house wasn't where it needed to be for selling purposes. So rather than sell, we became landlords and we rented it out. And in that time, we learned, the benefits of passive income because in Dubai, most of your employers pay for your housing. So we weren't paying housing in Dubai and we weren't paying housing in the States. So we were able to save all of the income we would have paid towards mortgage and using the rent to cover the mortgage. When we got back in 2015, the rental was doing well. The person was comfortable. We really just had no interest to move back to that house. We also had a child in Dubai. So our family was bigger. And we decided to purchase a home in another state where we would live. At the same time, because of how much we were able to save and because of what we had invested in life insurance policies, we actually had enough money in 2016 to purchase 3 properties. We purchased our primary home. We helped my mother-in-law purchase her home that she would live in retirement. And we purchased a rental property in Philadelphia. The rental property I did with a business partner. So we only had to cover half of the costs. And it was a really good deal because another referral in my network, I found a good realtor through my network. The realtor took me and my business partner out for the weekend. We saw 5 houses in like a couple of hours, and we put an offer on the one that was being sold by an estate because the family had no interest in maintaining a house that the previous owner lived in for the last 20 years. So there's a couple of benefits to that. One, they were motivated sellers. They had no interest to stay, and it was December. So they were also motivated to sell. So they accepted our cash offer with a discount. and then allowed us to get in there in January, do the renovations that we wanted to do to get a tenant in by the spring. So we had the timing and everything. What we learned, though, after 2 years is not all markets are kind or as kind as Maryland. And we had to go through an eviction. And it was going through an eviction that kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because the reason I got into real estate investing was to provide safe housing for people in Black communities. That was my motivation. I wanted to provide safe housing, affordable housing. And I also had a passion to, if the person could afford to buy the house, I wanted to be able to sell it to them. And then I had a situation where I had someone who had told me they wanted to buy the house and they had all these dreams, but then financially things happened to them. They were no longer able to pay the rent. And you have to be tough as a landlord. You have to be willing to kick out even your mom if you have to. My business partner and I were like, if we keep this person in the house, we're the only ones losing. They're continuing to live there rent free and we're not benefiting from this situation. And it's not best for them either. So we went through the eviction process, but we hated it. And we were like, maybe we'll get another tenant, but let's see how it goes. We got another tenant. It started out okay. And then we saw, once again, the holidays came around and they weren't paying the rent. And then we were like, okay, we don't want to do this again. So when an investor came along and offered us cash for the property so that we could break even, we sold and we got out and we were happy. But that experience taught me that although my heart was in the right place, it wasn't really built for rentals. And evictions, toilets, tenants, and maintenance was not what I wanted to be dealing with. So then I spent the next few years holding on to that money and figuring out, what do I like? I didn't give up on real estate. I just knew there had to be a different way to do it because that's not the way I wanted to do it. And I used my network to ask questions and other investors, what are some other ways to invest in real estate that don't require the headache that comes with being a landlord? It was in this genuine connection search conversations that I was having that one of my friends who's a realtor actually told me about multifamily syndications, which is the apartment buildings. You know, most of us know these huge apartment buildings. I've had family who lived in apartments. Most people assume like a company owns them, but believe it or not, multifamily syndications are actually owned by groups of investors. And those investors get involved because they want the residual income, the passive income that comes from those ownership opportunities. And so when I learned about that, I talked to someone that I didn't even know at my job who invests in those, finds the deals, finds investors, brings the two together. And in that process, I was introduced to another person who owns hotels and introduced me to the possibility that you can actually have ownership in hotels. And most hotels are not corporately owned either. They're also owned by a group of investors. And so in the fall of 2020, I fostered a relationship with Davon Reeves and Jessica Myers of Epic Collective, and they introduced me to my first hotel deal. So together we own Home 2 Suites in El Reno, Oklahoma. And that opportunity was sent on their email list. And I was on their email list and I asked a lot of questions, but then I decided to invest. And then a few months ago in 2021, the same friend, the realtor friend who introduced me to multifamily syndications and the idea, introduced me to someone who had a deal. I ended up investing in that one. And that's a big apartment subdivision in Orlando, Florida. So it's right next to Universal Studios. And so those are my two real estate, commercial real estate, though, opportunities that will now produce quarterly or monthly cash flow. Because when you do syndications, whether it's hotels or apartments, they have different terms. So the hotel has quarterly dividends and the apartment subdivision has monthly.
I have to say, hearing you talk about all the different facets of your business, I'm a little tired. And so I see why you need help.
Yeah, it could be a lot.
You're obviously juggling a 9 to 5 on top of this. And so it might be a pretty obvious question. What are your plans for the future? Where do you see yourself in a few years? Are you going to keep your 9 to 5? Are you going to go full time in all of your entrepreneurial ventures? What are you going to do?
I hope my boss isn't listening. I am praying on that. It's really hard for me to answer that question in a straightforward way because one, I'm a numbers money person and entrepreneurship is not consistent biweekly income unless you make it that way. And in order to make it that way, you have to have the streams of income or the revenue that's coming in to set those parameters for yourself. And that's what I've been focusing on in the last year to year and a half. Whereas before, when I first started my business, I just wanted to help people. And if I got a client, it was fun, but it wasn't a lot of pressure on me to really make sure that this yielded a certain amount of monthly income. Now my goal is very specific. Replace 9 to 5 income and then evaluate if this is something I want to do full time. So that's actually why I invested in different real estate opportunities and growing my business with a team, because I want to have streams of income that pay out at different parts of the year. The other strategy behind it is my real estate deals, they're 3 to 5 year commitments, but because I started them at different times, they will also pay out at different times. So I will have an influx of cash when we sell the hotel in 5 years, and then an influx in cash when we sell the apartments in 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. And I've made a goal while I'm still working to utilize my business income to invest in more opportunities. So I set a goal to do one major real estate deal a year that is going to contribute to my staggered payout plan. And while I'm doing that, I'm also keeping track of the monthly income that I'm earning so that I can know it's replaceable and it's the numbers prove it, right? And when I reach that point where it's fully replacing my income and I feel like I have enough investments that are paying out at different times and they're producing that cash flow that I need, then I can evaluate leaving. I do think it's tough though, because what I do, I've sort of wanted to do all my life. I'm weird. I was in 7th grade. I sold candy to classmates to raise money to go to Spain. And when I went to Spain, I had a great time with my classmates. And I came home and told my mom, I'm going to live and work abroad for the rest of my life. And my mom worked with lawyers. So all her lawyer friends were like, you should become an international attorney. And I said, okay, that sounds great. But I didn't know any differently. So when I went to college, I pursued international affairs and I was going to work in law. I'd even picked out the firm. This is how like crazy I was. And literally 7th grade to senior year, when I got to high school, I was probably the only kid who wanted to do international affairs. My school didn't know what to do with me because I'm a girl from the South and I went to a small boarding school, day school in North Georgia. So they were like, okay, you did all the research, so we'll just help you apply. So then I moved to big Washington, D.C. I get into this field, and then I find a scholarship that comes with 2 internships with the State Department, and I actually become a U.S. diplomat instead of a lawyer, because I learned that you don't need to go to law school to be able to live abroad and travel the world. And so when I started this career, I lived in Haiti, I've lived in Dubai, I've lived in Ecuador, and then I've lived in the U.S. for quite some time. And before discovering my passion for financial literacy, that's what I wanted to do. So even becoming an adult and realizing your interest can pivot, your passion can pivot, has been an adjustment for me. And it's been difficult to even admit that you want to do something else. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. And I think that's a really great approach in terms of even just life and entrepreneurship in general is to, you have to admit, like sometimes your interests change. Like, for example, I was a teacher for 10 years. I loved it. I moved on from that to do something else because there were other competing priorities and interests, and you can only pick so many things.
Exactly. And so that's where I am. So I don't know, but I'm praying about it. I am actively preparing my finances to have options.
And I'm also really curious about this cash flow. I know you want different amounts of money to kind of trickle in at different times. And so I know it's from a numbers perspective, that makes sense. Is that also a kind of mindset piece as well, as like knowing that there's steady income coming in, whether or not, the numbers may or may not make sense?
Yes, but I think mostly because I have a family now. If it was just me and I just needed to feed myself and crash on someone's couch, I probably wouldn't care as much. But I have two young boys and I have a husband in the private sector who's not expecting me to meet, match, or beat what he's making, but he does appreciate the contribution I make to the household. And I do respect the fact that we're a two-parent household who lives a certain way because we're a two-parent household. And I don't want to change that for my family just because I decided to become a full-time entrepreneur. But we are both in agreement that if it requires a temporary change, that's okay. I do like to travel several times a year. I do like to expose my kids to other cultures and experiences. I'm an experienced person. And I like to do a lot of these things with other family members. Sometimes they're not in a financial position to pay for the experience, but I want them to be there, so we pay. So to an extent, that's what I really want to be able to continue to do, regardless of if I work for myself or if I continue to work for someone else and run my businesses.
Got it. If there's one big mindset piece that you can take away from your 5 years so far in entrepreneurship, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to get help, which has kind of been the theme today. But I just want to emphasize this because I feel like too many entrepreneurs, especially women, are trying to run the business, do the business, advertise the business, market the business all at the same time. They always assume they can't afford it. And I will tell you that's probably not true. I chose to hire a person and it freed up so much of my time and allowed me to make more money. And I think that's what people need to understand. That is the possibility that's waiting for you, but you're not willing to explore it. And the other thing is, you don't have to hire someone permanently. You can hire people for projects. You can say, okay, I can't afford to hire a virtual assistant, but what if I hire someone to do 2 specific projects that I'm trying to accomplish in the next 6 months and see how it goes? If it works well for you, if that product sells well for you, then you can create a budget to hire more people. But start wherever you can afford to, because I don't think we were meant to be successful alone. I think it's Madam C.J. Walker this is a rough quote that I remember her saying, like, she started a business to empower other business women. She was an entrepreneur of her time and a millionaire of her time. And that's kind of the mindset that I want to have, is that I'm not meant here to be successful alone. And I want to help other businesses thrive too. And small business owners should support other small business owners, period. When you adopt a mindset that you don't have to do it alone, it allows you room and opportunity to seek partnerships and collaborate, and then also to hire out.
Amazing. Well, where can everyone find you and your amazing stuff online?
Yeah, thank you. Check out my website, thepurposeofmoney.com, or follow me on Instagram at thepurposeofmoney, or on Twitter at purpose_money, where you can get wealth building tips, see my journey, and check out some amazing wealth building strategies where I talk about life insurance, real estate, and budgeting and investing.
Awesome. Again, Acquania, thank you so much for coming on the Plutus Awards podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's take a look at some lessons we can learn from my conversation with Acquania. Lesson number 1 is to learn from those closest to you. So in Acquania's case, she had watched her mom growing up, trying all of these different entrepreneur ventures and all of her successes and failures, and used that to help her in her own entrepreneurial ventures. So for you, it could be a coach, it could be a colleague, it could be your boss at your 9 to 5, it could be your spouse or partner, whoever it is. Take a look at what other people are doing and see what's working and what's not, and how it can apply in your own business. Lesson number 2 is to listen and then connect the right people to each other. As you heard in my conversation with Acquania, it was really taking the time to listen and connecting the right people to help solve their problems is what really helped to grow her business. Not only was she able to earn more money, she was also able to help other business owners around her earn more money and free up their time as well. Lesson number 3 is to assess what your next step is and then work up the courage to do it. Whenever you do something for the first time and it can seem really risky, it is absolutely scary. As you heard from Acquania herself, she talked about hiring out and how that was a really scary first move. But what she did was she worked up the courage and she took the next step, no matter how small. So think about your business, whether it's writing a resignation letter to your boss at your 9-to-5, whether it's hiring a VA or sending that email that's really, really vulnerable to your audience member, whatever it is, think of some ways to really work up the courage and then just do it. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Plutus Awards Podcast. If you're interested in collaborating with other financial bloggers, podcasters, influencers, and more to chat about your work, interests, ask and answer questions, come join our Facebook community. Search for Plutus Community in the search bar or head to facebook.com/Plutus Community. We hope to see you there and get a chance to support you and your amazing work.